I'm going to open that up as well so that I have that here. And I like to be interactive while we're in person, when we're in person. All right, starting this. Computer is slow today. Here we go. Very good. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see the presentation? Does it look okay? Very good. Thank you, Gary. Okay. So I shifted the presentation a little bit today from our original plan. I want to talk about goals and growth, trained to transformation, leadership, and then we're also going to talk about commitment and communication. So a lot of information today. I don't expect you to take it all, but do take the bits and pieces that speak to you and then integrate that into your leadership and how you're working with people. So we're talking about leadership, developing the leader within, and I'm a certified business and leadership coach with the John Maxwell team. So I really love his content and how he helps people. I work with people in that capacity. I do like to share a little bit every time, if you've been here before, you've heard this, but the difference between coaching, speaking, and mentoring so that you have an understanding of what to expect as you go through this presentation. So typically when I am presenting in person, I'm asking you a lot of questions and there's a specific reason for that. So what is the difference between training, coaching, and mentoring? If I'm mentoring, if I'm stepping into the mentoring role, I'm sharing experiences. So like commonalities, right? Something I've gone through, this is what I did. Shared experiences kind of show you the expertise or help you relate to whatever it is that we're working through. If I'm training, I'm presenting information, I'm educating, I'm teaching. That's it. That's what I'm doing today. But I do like to integrate a little bit of coaching. So what is coaching? Coaching is me asking you questions, and I do that for a reason. Oftentimes, we are not taught to think for ourselves. So when I'm asking you questions, there's an intentionality behind it to make you sit and think for a minute. So ask yourself the question, right? If I give you this work and you don't do anything with it, you walk away and nothing changes. So when I ask you these questions, it's with the intention to elicit some kind of change or thought-provoking thing to help you do something different. So coaching is asking you questions. And when you come to that answer yourself, you are more likely going to follow through on whatever that is, right? If I can say, what is the one action that you're going to do differently? Okay, you'll have to wait. What is the one thing that you do differently? And it's Morgan tells you, well, you're not going to do it because Morgan said to do it. You're going to do it because you found that answer yourself and you know that that's the change that you have to make. So as we go through this, take these questions very seriously. Please, you're going to have to sit down and be quiet. How can you prepare today? Be committed to your own personal growth, be ready to add value, be here on time, be free of distractions. So put the phone away for just a little bit, be encouraging and be willing to learn. What can you expect? Again, we're going to talk about goals to growth, train to transformational leadership. Where does the transformation begin? What's the most important shift you can make? 5 actions you can walk away to become a transformational leader, as well as commitment and communication and what that means in terms of leadership. So just a quick check-in, let's use the chat box. We are almost a year into this new way of living, right? Closing in on the day that the world shut down. So how are you doing? Are you adjusting? Are you still waiting to come out of this? Go ahead and use the chat box and let's get a good response and feedback. I feel like when we were coming into 2021, we kind of expected things to just be different all of a sudden, right? Because it's a new year. But have things really changed? I think we have to step into this role of this is what life looks like now, whether that's leading through Zoom meetings or empowering through remote work. You're gonna have to sit down with me, okay, and be quiet. Shh, 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 shh. So goals to growth. Go grab your phone now. It's on the island. What is the difference between goals and growth? Goals give you a specific thing to work towards, and growth is this ongoing journey that we're on. So when did you discover the need for personal growth? Have you discovered the need? Are you continually learning? And growth is the only way to promise a better tomorrow. So goals help you do better, but growth helps you become better. By focusing on growth, the continual journey of learning and growing and shifting, you're going to be evolving and changing and helping more, empowering more, influencing more people. What are the growth changes that you go through? Growth outward to growth inward. So sometimes we think that we have to change our surroundings around us, but what if you focused on the internal growth? How would that change the way you lead people, the way you do things? Growth inside fuels growth outside. So if we were to look at a bubble and you have your dot in the middle, your why, if you can grow that internal driving thing or habits or desires, that's going to intrinsically change you, which is going to change your surroundings. So when you focus your growth inward, a byproduct of that is changing your growth outward or your external circumstances. Growth in everything to growth in a few vital things. I want you to raise your hand if you feel like you're really good at doing everything all the time, right? It's not a fair expectation that we're an expert at all of the things. What if we focused on changing a few vital things? It's impossible to grow everywhere all at once. And especially if you're a high performer or if you're a busy leader, you think you can do all of the things, but it's just not really that realistic. And then growth with a timeline versus growth without a finish line. So ask yourself, who am I becoming and what impact can I make? Instead of assuming that once you get to a specific point or timeline, then you've made it, because it's not how life works. So shifting to continually growing instead of just reaching something and being done. You've already made it. So how to become a growth-oriented person? And these are questions that you can jot down here. How can you determine if you have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset? So what does a fixed mindset sound like? You don't have to, Brayden. It's okay. So a fixed mindset would be, you know all of the things and there's no opportunity to grow. You've done all of the learning you'll ever do. Whereas a growth mindset is, the more you know, the more you don't know. So you're always learning and growing and figuring out what you can do better. What is one area, and let's go ahead and use the chat box for this question. What is one area that you're doing really well in terms of a growth mindset right now? So for me personally, I spend time almost every day reading a different book. Right now it's Atomic Habits. But what is one thing that you do really well that encourages that growth mindset? Is it asking for feedback? Is it listening to podcasts? Is it enrolling in a new course? What does that mean to have a growth mindset? And how are you investing into that? And then what is one area in a fixed mindset that you can work on? And sometimes we're not forced to move from fixed to growth until we have no other choice. And COVID this last year is a really great example. Would we have used this dynamic of remote working and Zoom calls and virtual training opportunities had it not been for COVID? We were forced to do that. But what is one area where you have a fixed mindset that you can improve upon? I think another thing for me is I would have never tried to work from home with kids until, again, COVID happened and I had been forced to figure that out. And sometimes it's incredibly messy, but you learn and adapt through adversity. So once you have these questions, how do you become a growth-oriented person? Embrace change. Does change feel hard for anybody else? But that's the one constant in our life, right? Is that it's always changing. There are no shortcuts to any place worth going. Everything worthwhile is uphill. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it, right? If it was easy, everybody would be here and they'd be thriving and they'd be successful. Adopt a teachable spirit. Now. Are you learning every day?
I'm trying to get this.
Where are you taking time to slow down and learn something new? I've learned the first person we are usually inept at canceling on is ourselves. How often have you had something on your calendar, especially a training or opportunity to learn, and something came up and you cancel on yourself, right? Because we put everybody else before ourselves. I'm challenging you to be selfish and adopt that teachable spirit. If you have something on your calendar, or if you can put something in your calendar, do that and stick to it. Make your love for learning greater than your fear of failure. So be willing to do it afraid. Be willing to mess up. It might be messy. You might not have the answers. But if you embrace that fear of failure, because how else do we learn? Imagine how good things could get. Develop a relationship with other growing people. You've heard the quote, you are most like the 5 people you surround yourself with. What does your company look like? Are they growing people, or are they stagnant people with a fixed mindset? When you're surrounded by people that are continually growing and learning and want to do better in your life, you're going to assume that. You're going to want those things. So you are most like the company you keep. Take inventory. Develop a greater humility. Are you willing to admit when you're wrong? Does it feel hard to admit when you're wrong or when you've made a mistake? Believe in yourself. What you think about yourself determines the investment you're willing to make. I think that's pretty powerful. So, how do you feel about your abilities? Are you showing up confidently? And sometimes I don't love the saying, fake it till you make it, but sometimes you have to. You have to believe that you deserve more or that you can do better. If you don't believe that, you're not going to take a chance on yourself. And embrace layered learning. Again, I think we have this perception that you have to know all of the things all of the time. But what if we assume the role of learning little bits? It's the snowball effect. Are you embracing life and just learning as you go? Because if you feel like you have to know everything all of the time right now, you're going to feel overwhelmed and you're just going to quit. But embrace a lifelong learning process instead of just letting it all go, or not even trying to begin with. So to become a goal or growth-oriented person, how do you win? Make growth your priority, and you'll unlock and achieve your potential. You'll feel good about yourself. You'll be showing up more confident. You'll strengthen your values and abilities. And when you have a strong core of what your values and abilities are, people are going to follow you. They follow people with a vision. They want to know where you're going. You'll grow humble. You'll have self-awareness. And again, these are all things that create the connection with those around you. You'll become more so you can do more. You'll increase your capacity to influence and lead. And you'll be an example for others to follow. So now that we have an understanding of what a growth-oriented leader is, how do you become a transformational leader? As we talked about trained and transformational leaders here, I want you to know that both are really great things. All of this information just gives you an opportunity to increase your capacity to lead. So would you believe me if I said that you influence tens of thousands of people in your life, regardless of your role or position? You are all a leader, regardless of where you're at in your organization or business. You have an opportunity to influence people. So when you invest in yourself, when you increase your leadership capacity, you increase your opportunity to influence those around you, and that's pretty powerful. So what is a transformational leader? Your actions inspire people to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more. If I asked you, how would you want to inspire people? What would that look like? What would your answer be? And if you feel comfortable, you can put that in the chat box. If somebody asks me why I do what I do, it's to empower you to wake up and love your life. So many people are just asleep at the wheel and going to work and going home and doing the same thing over and over until they die. But what if you could wake up empowered and happy and excited? It would be pretty fulfilling, right? So what is it that inspires you? What is your driving thing? What would make you a transformational leader? What is that why behind it? Right? Sharing positive energy. It's so good and it's so contagious. Influence people to think speak, and act in different ways that make a positive difference in their lives and the lives of others. And it brings upon exponential change. So you as a leader can create change. But if you learn how to influence those around you, that creates exponential change. And that's what we need here in our community. That's what we need in our organizations. So ask yourself, what are your motives? What are your methods? And what are your values? And I talk about self-reflection here because you have to be willing to slow down and do the work. Again, you could sit through this 40 minutes and just move on with your day. But if you don't slow down and do something different, nothing changes if nothing changes. We are so accustomed to being busy. We are so used to wearing this badge of busy, like it's a really good thing. But when we're busy, we don't slow down to see people around us that need us. We don't slow down to see opportunity. We don't slow down to do the self-reflection to find the answers that we need to become better. So when I ask you these questions, I encourage you to take them seriously. What are your motives? What drives you? How are you doing it? What are your methods? Because you can't change something if you don't know how you do it to begin with. So what are your methods for leading people? What are your methods for influencing people? What are your methods for inciting change? What does that look like? And what are your values? What are the things that you care about? If I asked somebody on your team, Stacy, what are your values? Would they know? How are you communicating that? So I encourage you to take some time and do some self-reflection. And maybe I make you do this in a couple minutes at the end of our presentation here. Here's a really great list of trained leaders versus transformational leaders. And again, both of these are really great things, but transformational just gives you that step up to make a little bit more of a difference. So trained leaders know how to lead, they're liked, they can influence today. They ask people to follow them, they love to lead, they're trained, they help people, they have a career, and they still impact. But transformational leaders know why they lead. It's contagious. People want to follow them. They influence today and tomorrow going forward. They ask people instead of to follow, to make a difference. They love the people they lead. They help people change. They have a calling and they impact many. Possess a clear picture of what transformational leaders do. So here's what transformational leaders do. They see things others do not see. Seeing solutions in the face of adversity. Again, if adversity means anything, this past year should show you what you can do as a leader. Where have you had to see opportunity or solutions in the face of adversity when you didn't think that we had any other choice? How have you helped your team adapt to working from home remotely, with kids, with virtual school, with all of the things that we're juggling right now? How you view things is how you do things. If you approach something with this negative mindset that there's never an answer, that it's never going to get better than this, well, that's going to be your reality. But if you can approach things with the idea that there's always an opportunity in the face of adversity, that's what it's going to look like. So how you view things, how you see things is how you do things. And if you don't see an opportunity, how can you lead others to see a better future around you and in your organization? How are you transcending that message to them? Transformational leaders say things that others do not say. Are you speaking up when it feels uncomfortable, or are you staying quiet because that's the safe thing to do? Use your voice as a tool for transformation and be willing to say things that others won't. Has there been an instance or a circumstance where you had to say something that maybe made you uncomfortable, but it's because nobody else would say something? That's what a transformational leader is willing to do. You believe things others do not believe. So I come back to the self-confidence here. Do you believe that you can make a difference? They'll believe in you because you believe it. So leading with your vision first. Bringing conviction to your leadership. Are you showing up excited and confident? And what does that look like? People want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. So if you can successfully communicate what your vision is, what your values are, where you want to take the team from here, where they are now to where they could be, people want to buy into that. So how can you create that buy-in? How can you get people excited? Because as humans, we automatically want to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. It's up to you to communicate that message. Feel things others do not feel. Passion creates energy and a tenacity in with people. So this comes down to empathy and being vulnerable. Paul Martinelli says, when the light goes on in your life, you want to turn on the light and you want to turn everyone else's light on as well. So if you figure out how to feel that excitement, how to see that potential, you're going to feel passionate about helping other people feel the same thing. Because why wouldn't you want them to wake up just as excited as you are? That's why I'm here talking today, right? I love doing this and communicating this and helping people become better and show up confidently in what they do. And because I love doing that, it's easy for me to help others do the same. And when I see them starting to thrive and do really well, that's what drives me. That's what makes me feel really excited. And transformational leaders are willing to do things others do not do. So how do you face fear? What do you do? How do you push through that uncomfortable thing of, oh my gosh, I've never done this before, but I know that this is what I have to do, or I know this is the step I have to take? Lean on your sense of purpose and self-belief. So I come back to self-reflection here. If you don't know the driving factors behind what you do, the vision, the values, the things that you care about, what are you going to fall back on when things get hard? It's important that you slow down and you have this backbone, this core of what keeps you going so that you can lean on that sense of purpose when things start to feel really hard. When is the last time you slowed down to do some reflection? Does anybody journal or meditation or whatever it might be? You're a therapist. How often do you slow down and do self-reflection? I'd be interested to know if you want to put that in the chat box. Does anybody journal every day? Good. So you're here because you want to become a better leader, right? What's important to know, we come back to the self-reflection, is you have to focus on your own transformation before leading others to it. So you're likely in some kind of leadership role now, right? You're already walking the walk. But I would encourage you to do that. You have to be able to multitask and focus on yourself as well. So equipping, how are you equipped to be a successful transformational leader? The first step is you do it, right? Then I do it and I bring somebody with me and we do it together. Okay. Once I've taught you, then you do it and I'm with you. And now that I've equipped you to do it, you do it. And you're strong and equipped to do it and you do it and teach somebody else. Do you see the exponential growth there? So what is it that you want to transcend or teach people or empower people to do? How can you become an expert in that? An expert is arbitrary, right? You don't have to have a certification to become an expert in something, but show up confidently in it. Spend the time, get to know how to do it. Once you know how to do it, teach somebody else and empower them to teach somebody else. That's where we see exponential change and growth. Transformation starts with you. You cannot give what you do not have. So I come back to equipping yourself to be successful. The first person you must lead is yourself. And we teach what we know, but we reproduce who we are. So coming back to your values and your integrity and your vision, right? You can teach anybody how to do a job. But how do you teach them integrity and humility and empathy? How do you teach them how to influence people? That comes down to us reproducing who we are as a transformational leader. Take positive action based on your internal changes. So if we're doing the self-reflection, we talked about this in Goals to Growth, you're taking advantage of that internal change that you've spent time self-reflecting and doing. Are you committed to taking action? Going from knowing to doing, this is talking about becoming an expert in whatever it is that you're passionate about. We talked about everything worthwhile is uphill. You have to be willing to invest the time into yourself in whatever way that looks like. If you're not willing to slow down and invest the time, why would anybody else? And action should override talking, thinking, planning, surveying, studying, and resting. All of these things are needed, right? But we starve between idea and execution. We get stuck in the middle here. And you have to take talking or thinking or planning and do the action behind it. Transformation is a result of application. You need education and planning and studying and all of the things, but real transformation is a result of application. It's a result of action and doing. Are you willing to get your hands dirty? So how do you create an environment that promotes positive change? Leaders are positive about transformation. Agree or disagree? Let's do this in the chat box. Everything rises and falls upon leadership. We agree, right? So look at your organization. Everything rises and falls upon leadership. Does that sit really well with you or does it not? Trick question, Paul, no. Resources that teach good values. So what do you have at your disposal that you can use to influence and empower and teach others? Teachable and reachable. And this could be something as simple as sending a 5-minute YouTube video out to your team once a week. Don't overthink this. There is a resource out there, plr.me, I think is what it is. Endless resources. You could easily go grab something to your team and send them out like a quick PDF to empower them in whatever capacity, time management, communication, anything. Are you using resources that are easily at your disposable to give to your team or to those around you? Create small groups where people learn and participate. So this could look like roundtables and masterminds, little things like we're doing today. Are you giving an opportunity to get people together virtually right now, right? But to collaborate and learn from one another. Fostering that teamwork environment, because that's where rapport is built and communication and trust. Are we fostering these things for people to work together? And commitment reproduces leaders. I come back to how are you helping others develop? What does that look like? And if you have things that you're doing in your organization or in your business, go ahead and share that because we can learn from one another. How are you helping people grow? What are some of the things that you've done? So I love sharing PDF resources. Roundtables, masterminds are some of my favorite. A YouTube video, podcasts, training opportunities. How are you helping others develop? Transformational leaders commit to making a difference with others in their community. You're all here because you're part of the, Mary Ellen says TED Talks. Those are so good too. And they're like 20 minutes long. Anybody can do that. Are you involved in your community in the bigger picture? You guys are all here because you're part of the Chamber, which is an incredible resource for our business community. The Chamber has been invaluable to me in so many ways between connections and relationships. Some of my best friends I've met through the Chamber. Are you getting involved? So what are some patterns that we see through leadership? Top-down leadership is leadership influences filters down, right? So it starts at the top and then it goes down. Then we have small to big. Mass movements start with a few people. Change that we see always starts with a few people. So be brave enough to start that conversation. And then inside out is those inner values that we have taken the time to do the self-reflection on, influences our outward behavior. So 3 very different things here, but you all have an opportunity to be involved. The other thing I really love with this comment here about getting involved in your community, and I talked about this last month, is you can be in a paid leadership position. That does not mean somebody's going to follow you. If you really want to see your leadership skills, volunteer your time with a nonprofit, because nobody has to follow you in a volunteer capacity, right? If you want to see how to elicit change or learn how to elicit change, strengthen those leadership bones, volunteer your time and learn how to influence people where they're not paid to follow you. Does that make sense? So where are you giving back your time? Where are you strengthening those muscles to practice and get better? Because really that's the only way we do it, is by learning and action. So here are some questions to consider, and I'll give you some time to write these down. Do you agree that transformation needs to occur in a leader before he or she can lead others to experience transformation? And we have some time here, so if anybody wants to unmute or use the chat box, let's do that. Let's go through these questions here. If we were in person, I would call on you. Do you agree that transformation needs to occur in a leader before he or she can lead? Okay, yes. So can you see the importance of taking some time to do this self-reflection and see where you have an opportunity to grow and shift if you want to increase your influence? You could stay status quo and still do a really great job today, which is fine. All right, here's another question. Which occurs first? Discovering the need for transformation within a community or culture, or the transformation within yourself? So which occurs first, discovering the need for transformation within a community or within the leader? Good. Within the leader, within yourself is what we're seeing. Okay. Do you believe you have the potential to lead positive change? Yes or no? Good. You probably wouldn't be here if you said no to this answer, right? Where do you see the greatest need for transformation in our community? So this could be within your organization, or this could be within Hagerstown. This is very subjective here, and if you feel comfortable answering, go ahead and do it. What are you willing to attempt to make a difference for the people you care about? What are you willing to do to make a difference? Are you willing to have the hard conversations? Are you willing to be vulnerable and humble? Are you willing to mess up? Are you willing to make hard decisions? Are you willing to put in the time and effort that it takes? So I encourage you to go through these questions when you have time today. If you have to, put it on your calendar, 10 minutes. But if you don't take the time to do this self-reflection, to answer these hard questions, you won't see the change that you need in your leadership to influence those around you. So we've talked about a lot of things today, from goals to growth and trained to transformation. We've talked about commitment and communication, and we're going to tie that in here at the end. And then we'll have a couple minutes for questions and discussion. So what are the indispensable qualities of a leader? We're going to talk about 2 of these. Commitment. Would you follow a leader that is not committed to your organization or to your team? Yes or no? In any relationship that you have, personally or professionally, how profound is commitment? It's the backbone, right? So commitment starts in the heart, the inside. Do you see the reoccurring theme here? Commitment is tested by action. Again, another reoccurring theme. And commitment opens the door to achievement. So you have to know what your values are, what your vision is, the things that you're passionate about, which then leads to action, to doing the do. And a byproduct of that is the achievement that happens when you commit to something. So which stage are you in? And you could take a specific goal or instance. Cop-outs, no goals or commitment, right? So they're not even afraid to make a commitment. Holdouts are afraid to make the commitment because they're afraid to fail. So has anybody felt afraid to either verbalize a goal or put it down on paper because, well, if I don't do that and then I don't reach it, I didn't really fail, right? I could easily say that I did Whole30 for the month of January. And in my mind, I was like, well, if I don't tell anybody and then they see me eating a waffle, am I really failing? Because nobody knows. How often have you been afraid to say something that you're working on because you're afraid that it might fail? Be willing to share that. Be willing to be vulnerable. Dropouts quit when it gets hard. And all outs set the goal, commit, and they pay the price to achieve it. They're willing to do whatever it takes at all costs. And full transparency, I did cheat one day in January, if we're just going to be all vulnerable here. So does commitment make sense? You have to ask yourself, am I willing to commit to this change or task or goal that I'm working on, even when it starts to feel really hard? And then if you are committed, how can you transcend that to those around you? What is the message? How are they going to know that you truly are committed? Sometimes it's not enough to just say, yeah, I'm committed to this. There has to be action behind that. And what does that look like? And if you have things that you're working on within your team, ask them, how committed are you to this? What are you going to do when things start to feel really hard? Or what will you do when we fail? How are we going to figure out our mistake and make a redo? What does that look like? You can ask all of these questions to your team too. And then we have communication. Does communication ever feel hard in an organization or with those around you? It's such a simple concept, right? But do we slow down enough to ensure that we're actually communicating with people? So how can you simplify the message? The biggest piece of advice when I'm working with any organization, so I'm certified in DISC. I really love the DISC personality assessments because once you have an understanding of your personality style and those around you, you know how to communicate better, right? And oftentimes when I'm doing this, especially in a group setting, and people are sharing their DISC assessments, somebody could be really direct and to the point. They're going to be a high D because they just want to see the job done, right? Whereas an S cares about the team and all of the good, happy things. An S might be overly offended by a high D because they just want to see the job done. But if you have an understanding of how people are communicating, it breaks down those barriers and it builds rapport with one another. It increases understanding. But I encourage people to simplify the message, over communicate. Don't ever assume that somebody just knows the answer or has an understanding of what's happening. My biggest piece of advice is over communicate, simplify the message. Over and over and over and over. See the person. So this comes back to understanding their communication style. How are they talking? How are they receiving your message? Show them the truth. Are you being vulnerable and humble? And seek a response. So follow back up. Do you understand? Do you know what the expectations are? Does this make sense? Be clear, refocus your attention, and live in your message. Walk the walk. Okay? And lastly, I'll finish this out with organizations are not limited by their opportunity. They are limited by their leader. So you truly have an opportunity to make a difference, to increase your capacity to lead and influence those around you if you can take some of these bits and pieces and integrate them into your leadership style. Thank you. I will open it up to any questions or feedback. We have some time for discussion, and then you get to go on your Friday.
They named this day after me, by the way.
They did?
Yeah. That's what my daughters say anyway. Well, I just want to make a couple comments. First of all, good reminder about transformational versus transactional leadership. That's really important. And what it takes to be a good transformational leader, it's a marathon, not a sprint, but commitment and persistence. You have to have good passion, be a good role model. And another good reminder, I'm looking at everyone here on this call, most of whom I know, maybe like me, you don't take time to slow down and reflect. And that's a big part of a leader's job, is stop and think about where you're headed and what your organization needs or what you need, and just take time to sit and reflect, even if it's 10 minutes. And I'm guilty of moving on to one more thing because we're all so busy, but it really does, the saying, you have to slow down to speed up. It's really a good reminder to have some plans, to have some vision, and you're the only one that can do that. You have control of your schedule. So that was a really good reminder for me anyway.
Slow down to speed up is so good. That was my biggest lesson in COVID. And I didn't learn it until I had to, for sure. And I talk about this story all of the time. Chris Hogan talks about in Live to Lead with John Maxwell, how he was going on his day and he asked an employee, how are you doing? And she said, I'm fine. And he could have just kept on walking, but he noticed that something was off, and he slowed down and he asked her more questions, and he realized that her mom was sick, but she was too afraid to take time off to go home. And by doing so, he made her, he's like, no, you need to go get on a plane now and be with your mom. But how often are you just going through your day and just assuming that people are fine because that's what they say? Any other feedback or takeaways or questions?
First rule of sales, first person who talks loses. Hey, I do want to thank Heather for her work with us on Leadershift. This is going on, I think, 2 years now that we've done this. Started in person, then we went virtually, which I think has been good. And we're going to take a pause on Leadership. Morgan has some other things she's working on. She's not going anywhere. She's still around, so she's accessible. I think anyone on this call, just reach out to other resources, because if you're having difficulty or challenges, reach out to other folks to get feedback. And it's not always easy to do that in your organization if you're the leader. And so use your colleagues around the community to get feedback. And, I just think that looking at everyone on this call, you'd have a lot of good folks that are willing to bounce some ideas off of you. So with that said, Morgan, thank you for your time with us. We really appreciate it. And it's not like she doesn't have anything else to do with her 2 kids, and she's got like 8 or 9 dogs or something like that.
Every time I talk to Paul, the number of dogs increases. We're up to 8 or 9 now. So we started, gosh, it's been a while, and I truly miss the in-person, because we could do, when we could be close to people, some team building, and I'm eagerly looking forward to the day we can get back to that. So I'm going to be taking a little bit of a break with virtual school, and it's a lot. My coaching and consulting is not stopping. It will always be a resource for you guys, for the chamber. I'm not going anywhere. You're not going to get rid of me that easy. So please reach out. We're going to be back soon, and I appreciate you taking the time to be here more than you know.
So we have recorded this. We'll have that available. We'll send it out to you in particular. And then Morgan, if you send Brianna your slide deck separately,
yes, I will do
share
that
with everyone on this call. And again, Morgan's contact information will be in there as well.
Thank you guys so much. Have a beautiful Friday. Enjoy that weather.
Thank you, Morgan. Thank you so
Be
much.
safe,
All the
everybody.
best.
Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll miss Leadershift.